may be trouble ahead. Take one.
Okie dokie. We'll take one here.
So my name is Chris, the Bish Leiden, and I am from Steve Bonham and the Long Road. And today we are starting our first steps on a new project. Over lockdown, we've been writing these songs separately. We've been coming together over Zoom and over the internet for the last few months, getting these songs more honed down. And now we're spending 5 days in the studio, recording them, mixing them, making the videos at the same time.
So I'm Steve Bonham, and I'm a musician, I'm a playwright, I'm an author, I'm a psychologist, and they're all bits of my life. And I've always played music and in the clubs and festivals and things. And on that long journey, I've picked up these two friends, who seem to know what they're doing, so I've tagged along with them really, and that's the Long Road.
Kev Moore. I'm a member of the Long Road, and it has indeed been a long road getting to this point. I started in music when I was about 8 years old in my hometown of Derby, and that's kind of how I met Steve, my compatriot in the Long Road, because he came to see us play. I think it was at a school exhibition, hobbies exhibition thing, and he was stunned that people could get together and make a little band, and he asked what music we were playing on this particular day, and we said, well, it's one of our own. And he seemed amazed that people could actually write their own songs. It was a bit of a revelation to him, he's told me since, and I think that's what started him on the path to songwriting. And it was a long time before I met Steve again. Probably, I guess we hadn't spoken for about 30 or 40 years, and I became aware of a project he was doing for his old friend, our old friend, in fact, Tim, who'd fallen ill, and he was doing a benefit show for him, and I went along to it. I happened to be in the UK, because I live in Spain now, but I was in the UK at the time, and we met up, and I happened to compliment him on one of the songs that he'd written that they were doing. And he invited me to Ireland to record bass for his next album. And it sort of went on from there, and then between Steve, Chris and I, we sort of formulated this idea for the Long Road, which has now developed over, I suppose, 2 or 3 albums worth of material.
This project it's a very special moment, actually. It feels like the end of a final point on a long journey, or an important point of embarkation. I'm not quite sure which. We want to take the whole idea of the Artisan and show what that means musically, and bring something special together around that.
As a band, we have this sort of fascination with American music, particularly American music from the southern states of America, but also we can't help but be influenced by our own heritage. We're, the three of us, me, Kev and Steve, we're English, we're English, and we're songwriters from England as well. So we have this sort of fusion of American influenced and English, British music coming together.
It's a lot of different things. First of all, it's a way of doing things. So an artisan is somebody who has craft and skill, and I certainly think my 2 colleagues in there have that. It's about inspiration. It's about being authentic. You're not doing something that's not you. And I think the last thing is it's about really knowing your raw materials. If you're a potter, you've got to know the clay. If you're a baker, you've got to understand the flour and the yeast, and so it's having that almost intimate relationship with the raw materials of what you're doing.
And what I think we have with this particular lineup is you've got Chris, who's the trained musician. He's the one that kind of makes sense of it all. Steve's self-taught. I'm completely self-taught. Steve comes from a much different place to me musically, much more sort of acoustic based. And then when you put me in the mix as well, it's a very interesting melting pot. And it's probably taken us a couple of albums to find out what we are, really. And I really don't think anybody sounds like us, because it's such a strange combination of pieces. You know, it's like, I mean, I suppose it's love it or hate it. It's like when somebody decides, I'm probably the pineapple you put on a pizza. You know, it's like, really? But yeah, I think it works. I think that, rather than, I don't think any of us try to fit in with the other. I think it's a case of, no, this is what I do and this is what's going on top of this track. Instead of saying, oh, I'd probably better be a bit folky then, or I'd better be, and it's like, no, I'm going to drum like this. And I think it's really contributed to what we've now decided to call heavy wood. It's like, it's all acoustic instruments, but it sounds big, you know, it's got quite an edge to it. And so yeah, it's a happy accident really that the three of us have sort of come together to do that stuff.
I kind of see it as my job. I've got to listen to every blooming note that we've put down just to make sure that it's all as we expect. And actually, at this point, it's really important, because if we add an extra bar here or add a half bar at this stage, it can upset us later on, because we're expecting one thing and something else has happened. So I've got to listen. That's my job at this point, is to listen to that everything we start to put down is absolutely as we're expecting. And then once we've got enough of the basics down, so once Kev's done drums and bass, I'll put piano down on this eventually, and then yeah, some organ as well. And then later on tonight, hopefully, we'll get the vocals done. Once we've done all the instruments, we then do the vocals. So Steve will put the main vocals down, and me and Kev will have some fun working out some backing vocals.
Yes, we will fill it with our angelic voices.
Absolutely.
Right, so I'm Stuart Jones. I'm the owner and engineer here at Woodworm Studios. And yes, we've got Steve Bonham and the Long Road in. So at the moment we're tracking, so we're trying to get everything down. We do it as overdubs mainly, so we'll build the track up from a guide, adding drums and then bass and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's the process at the moment, and then once this is done we'll be doing edits, and then it'll be into mixing, and once mixing's done it then goes off to mastering.
Well, Stuart's the engineer. I mean, that sounds just the engineer. What a terrible thing to say about this poor man. He's a brilliant engineer. He's the guy who makes sure all the tracks are recorded properly, but he's so much more than that. We also call him the fifth member of the group, which is a bit weird because there's only three of us, and I'm not sure who the fourth is actually. But he's got great musical ears and lots of ideas, and you know, he is part of the gang. He's, you know, he makes suggestions and changes things, and we tend to listen to him. And he just is so good at recording acoustic music. He's probably one of the best.
Let me just have a little listen, so don't play.
Can you put more drum? So I've turned the click track down because it was full on. It wasn't loud enough.
You want more drum?
Yeah, more click track.
Yeah, we've just been getting a guide guitar and vocal part down, which is basically our template for when we're recording the song. So none of this will remain at the end of the process, but it's what we use to sort of remind ourselves of the structure of the song, and then we build upon it from there onwards. So I'll use that so I know where I am when I'm putting the drum parts down. Then I'll layer that with the bass, and then we'll move on, you know, ad infinitum, adding all the different parts. So it's basically just a rough framework of the song, the guide that we follow.
I think it's going pretty well. It's always a bit tricky on day one because you don't know how long it's going to take to get set up, how long it takes to sort of get the vibe of things, like getting the drum kit actually sounding good, getting the mics in the right places for all the instruments and things. So it sometimes takes a bit of time and you think, oh, spending ages getting ready and doing little bits and bobs of actual recording. But it does all add up, and so by the end of day one, you kind of sometimes feel like, oh, we didn't get very much done. But actually you got plenty done. So it's always a weird one, day one, and we all remember that now. We all know how it feels, that day one sort of weirdness.
It was always my passion. Apparently the first words I ever said as a child, standing in front of the telly when the Shadows were on, was "Wonderful Land," which apparently was me trying to say "Wonderful Land," which was the name of the song that the Shadows were playing. So it started early, and yeah, I've always been drawn to it as long as I can remember. And I remember even 20 years ago, when a lot of musicians were already jaded, I remember a guy in one of the music shops saying to me, "You're still so enthusiastic about it, Kev." And I said, "Yeah, but why wouldn't I be, you know?" And I'm as excited about making music today as I ever was as a child. It's something that's sustained me really my whole life. I've never lost that love of it, you know, and that excitement that it brings to create new music.
I guess not being able to not do music, for some people like me and like Kev and Chris, it's not a choice. You don't choose to play music. You know, it would be like choosing to breathe. You know, it's not an option.
I mean, music for me it's been part of my life for forever. Like, I'm the youngest of a bunch of siblings, and they all played piano, and my dad was a great pianist. And so when I was little, I was just surrounded by people playing the piano. I thought, well, I want to do that. And I started having lessons, and then famously in my family, I started refusing to have lessons. There were points when they were literally having to, you know, when you try to take a cat to the vet, you've got to get the cat in the box. I was doing the four arms at the frame of the door into the car, so they had to force me in. And so after a while I quit having piano lessons, but then I started playing music because it was on my terms, and that's what worked for me. I know it doesn't work for everybody, and it was a bit of a risk from my parents' point of view, but it worked for me. That I was making music because I wanted to do it, and it suddenly felt good again. And so I spent a lot of time as a teenager just making music with my pals, doing jazz things. Met Steve at around that point, started making music with him, and I mean, I'm sure the guys will agree that music is just it's a vital part of humanity and has been for forever. And you know, I've seen the power that music can have, literally changing people's lives, redirecting the course of their life, rethinking their choices, making better decisions, making better relationships with people, and the power of music to convey a story is like no other. You know, there's all the bits and bobs that people do in the arts, whether it's theatre or music or visual art or dance. They're all telling the story. But for me, you know, music has all the bits. It has the drama, it has the messages, it has the emotion. It's just, you know, there's nothing else like music.
It's about experimenting. It's about having great companions. You know, I love working with these guys. You know, they bring so much more into the music and songs I've written than I could find myself. So that's just a great message for everybody. You know, just the people around you, and that's what I like about what's happening now. There seems to be more focus on how people can grow together, and Yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Grabs you by the throat. Something's gotta change. Something's gotta change. You and me chasing stars without a...
And musicians, if you go back in time, they were really the custodians of the stories. This is how stories were remembered and handed down, because it was easier to remember them if they were put into song.
Yeah.
And the musician has always been the traveller and the troubadour. So they would go around not only telling the stories in song to various communities and courts and what have you, but they would collect them as they went as well. So they were in fact, you know, the digital memory of the day. And it's a huge legacy, that, and it runs through the veins of every real musician, I would say. It's you know, despite the attempts of the industry to pin everything down. And what I think's happened now, especially in this year of the pandemic and what have you, is it's the rise of the artisan now, because everybody's having to look inwardly and probably at the microcosm of what's happening in their lives and trying to get creative, because the big venues, the big companies have been hamstrung by this event, and people are now at all levels of music sat at home trying to find ways to deliver it.
Well, I think with this notion of the extraordinary stories of ordinary folk, and the artisan music made from the raw materials that we find around us, I think there is a growing movement, as you say, the rise of the artisan this year. There's a growing movement not just in the people that make the stuff, but in the people that want to experience it as well. There's more and more people realising, this Spotify model isn't actually great for the people that make stuff, because fundamentally the people that make stuff, Spotify's only any use if you're at the top of the game, if you're your Taylor Swift or your huge names. Yeah. The other thousands of rungs in between, you know, the audience and those superstars, are the people that are making the real stuff, real stories that people love to hear, and they want to hear it. They want to be able to experience it. Finding the right venues, finding the right places to once things open up again, that people can experience it. Finding the right people that it's not about English folk or country or Americana. It's about an approach to creativity that an artisan approach is, that chimes with people, and they don't. Most audiences don't care if it's labelled as folk or country or Americana. Some of them will. There are some people that are very specific. Oh yes, I'm a country fan. But actually, most people if it's good, I like it.
Ghost dancers dance in vain. Fires go out in summer rain. Rosalie, oh Rosalie, would you dance with me all night long at the desert's edge beneath the Joshua tree?
There are some of these songs which are more jazzy. There are some of these songs which are a bit more country. If those are the sort of the two extremes of my little spectrum, and there are some bits which are just sort of a bit, it's all a bit of bit, it's all bits of bits, it's never one thing. But something like Strange Motel, it's very jazzy. Some of the chords, sort of very sort of 1950s American detective show. We have that sort of chord. That's the lot in Strange Motel, but I wouldn't play that sort of chord in Something's Gotta Change, which has more of a sort of almost 1960s pop song about it, where actually it's almost a bit rock and roll. Switch to playing on the piano playing. So the chorus. So that's the chords of the chorus. And actually, if that was in a different world, that would be a 1950s rock and roll song. And it's So I like those different sort of the different sort of tendrils that our music spans into, but it's our stuff. But the Venn diagram of what it crosses into is huge and varied, and that's what I like about it.
Alligator feather in his hat, twirling on a silver cane. We're gonna get washed away. We're gonna get washed away. Looking for a place to play. We're gonna get washed away. We're gonna get washed away. Hoping for a place to stay.
My personal favourite, because I wrote all the music to it, is probably Down at the Crossroads, because I do like it when Steve sends me a lyric, because I like his storytelling style, and it inspires me then to create the music around it, and I quite enjoy that.
Surprise! I'm down here at the crossroads, bourbon in my hand. Got no time for friends and lovers, I wanna join the band. Down here at the crossroads, not gonna make a stand. Get aboard my clean machine, I wanna join the band. Get aboard my clean machine, we're off to join the band.
I write songs in many different ways. Sometimes it'll be a riff that I start off, sometimes I'll write a lyric, but I quite enjoy that with The Long Road, when Steve sends me his words and I put the music together for it. And it's I quite enjoy building that up as a demo and presenting it to the band. But having said that, some of the other stuff he's put forward for the album, there's a song called Strange Motel that's kind of like a strange, smoky American jazz song that's populated with peculiar people. And I quite like that. I've got a feeling that's going to be a nice track for the EP.
The police out here are trying to frame me, just a face in an angry crowd. Someone come and save me. Out on the highway, this heart-worn carousel, we're all seeking refuge in this strange motel. In the room across the hall sleeps the lonely Madeleine.
It's a very strange thing writing a song. It's a very strong making music. Particularly, it's kind of an inside-out stuff, an outside-in. It just you know there are songs. Sometimes I just think of the title. I just think of a title, and it just hangs around, sort of waiting to be turned into something. Or sometimes it's just, well, the song we're just recording at the moment, Western Requiem. I was having my guitar fixed, and the luthier who was fixing it had just made this 12-string guitar, literally just finished it, and handed it to me to play, and I just started playing the riff that is now that song, and the consequence is I had to buy the guitar, which wasn't in the financial planning for that month, but I've now got the kind of, I don't want to be too weird, but I now understand after all these years that guitars often contain a number of songs, and your job is to release them. People often ask why do guitarists have lots of guitars? Because they don't have the same songs in them all. That's as simple as answers you ever need. Every guitar has a seam of stuff, but your job is to get it out.
We all started off as somebody who'd never written a song before, never written a lyric before, and you do it more, and it's almost a bit like an addiction. You do a little bit, you want to do more of it, because it sort of taps away at something that, I think that actually just about everybody has this artisan notion in them. They just need to be able to access it and give themselves the time to access it. So we want other people to think, the raw materials of my life, I could see them in some artistic output, and you know, bloody go for it, do it. You know, there is literally nothing stopping you from doing it except your own fear. And you know, we all have that. We all have our own fears, but actually, if you pick past that and brush past that and sneak past that, you get into this place where you can you elevate to the next level, and it's amazing. So that's what we want to hope people can take away from it, is that they elevate.
Do you know the best way of living your life is not to live your life sort of, you know, it's to know what you want to do, but not have it obsessive. It's got to be done but then, because sometimes it's just not the right time. And it's like with everything, it's not just music, it's how you live your life. You know, it's the old Bible thing, there is a season, you know, and there's a moment where this is the moment, and a tragedy is if you don't spot the moment. That's the thing. So this moment of making this music couldn't be at any other time. I mean, it's crazy. One says, even doing this, and you know, you've been part of the challenge. Doing this in the time of COVID, you know, it's nuts. But it had to be now. Had to be now because the evolution of our music has reached this point where it can go to this next level. It's got to be now because our experience has all matured, and we've now done a lot of music together, so we can do things we never dreamt of doing, because we've had time to reflect over the last few months. You know, carpe the hell out the diem, you know, carpe the hell out the diem, that's it.